What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Monday edition of the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian, here with Andre and Randy. How are you guys?
Doing good. Looks like you guys are in the same state. The sun is
I am in San Antonio, Texas.
I'm halfway between San Antonio and Texas. I'm only like 40 miles from Brian.
I'm even in a better state, Florida.
There you go. So, yep, I am in. I'm doing this from my laptop, as people like to call them. Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. We consider this your go-to podcast for the latest in cybersecurity news and analysis. And today we're diving into three critical stories that highlight the evolving landscape of cyber threats and defenses. We're going to discuss the ongoing debate about ransomware payments, the UK's innovative approach to protecting schools from cyber threats, and we're going to talk about a sophisticated attack on Israeli organizations through a compromised ESET partner. And then we're also going to follow up on two stories that we've covered on previous podcast episodes. So stay tuned for those follow-ups and insights. And as we always say on the show, we run this show without ads. We don't bore you with those ads. We don't charge a fee for the show. Our fee is like a share us, like us, subscribe to us, right? It's like free, as in free beer, the education. And then we're asking you to do us a favor and share the content so other people can find this stuff. When you share, when you like, when you subscribe, those algorithms pick up those signals, and then they show this to other people who might be searching for this content or who they think are interested in this content. So we won't run ads as long as you guys keep helping us grow the show organically. So you want to add something?
No.
Yes, it's a threat. So first article up on the docket here, guys. We're gonna go through these fairly quickly, but we're talking about this article that was featured on CNBC over the weekend. I think it was over the weekend or late last week, where the government urged new thinking on ransomware payments. It's a story by Barbara Booth. She's basically writing a story here where the U.S. government is calling for a paradigm shift in how organizations handle ransomware attacks, urging a reconsideration of ransomware payments to cyber criminals. Government basically says, we know what businesses are up against. We understand we can't outlaw it or ban it right now, but they really want it to go in that direction, because if you siphon off the revenue stream for these cyber criminals, what do they really have, right? So let's get into it, guys. Do you think this is more of a pipe dream and something that will never be realized? Or there wouldn't be the term crime pays if it didn't pay, right? So right. I can't imagine, it's kind of like saying like, hey, don't put money in a bank, or don't put jewelry in a jewelry store, and the cyber criminals won't, and the criminals won't come after it, right?
Right.
I don't see how this plays out in the way that the government wants it long term, but what are your thoughts?
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, you can pound sand and tell businesses you're frustrated at them paying, but if there's no solution and nothing that's forcing them, aka regulation, then these businesses won't do it.
Yeah, that's a thing, Brian. It's like this, it's like a dog chasing his tail almost. It's this circular pattern of, well, okay, so we pumped, what was it? Many trillions of dollars, of which we put 800 million towards cybersecurity. Problem still there. We've started these, certain laws. We've enacted certain things. We've said you have to be, if you're a bank, you got to have all these rules. If you deal with money or people, you got to have all these rules. We've got states that have rules about some of this stuff. Problems still happening. what's left to talk about in that circular scenario? What's left is, well, if we get rid of ransomware payments, then maybe that takes away the incentive to do the crime. Because very real world speaking, right now, the country of France does not pay ransom payments for actual people that are kidnapped. And so if a group of people get kidnapped and there's some French citizens in there, often they just let them loose because they know they're not going to get any money from them. They're going to keep the Americans and the Brits and whoever else because they know they'll get money from them. So this is a pretty good point. If we totally outlaw ransomware payments, it could have a potential on the crime. But,
well, I'll argue all day long that if every country banned paying for kidnappers, then the kidnappers would just change their tactics.
They'd do something else. Exactly.
Right. They would. I mean, they just let France go because they know they're going to get paid elsewhere. Right. If everyone stops paying, then the game's going to change.
Well, instead of kidnapping, we'll have to just go back to thievery, right? And selling it. So yeah, so you're right. It's like the dog chasing his tail in my mind. Like, it's a thing, but I don't think it's going to really solve anything.
Andre?
Yeah, I believe I mentioned it last week, also for the government to stop helping these companies after the fact. I think that would also help. And if they really, and we really don't know how much the FBI is even helping when, that's a famous quote. Anytime there's some type of cyber attack, we'll read the article that says we've contacted the FBI and they're working with us and so forth like that. But they could just send an agent over to do a report and then that's it, But if the government kind of just turns their back and says, well, too bad, so sad, you're a business and you got to deal with it, then maybe that will also get these people to stop to start taking it seriously.
So let's talk about a business that's facing a ransomware demand, right? What are some pros and cons that come to your mind when a business is faced with paying a ransom, or take it to if they do pay the ransom? What are pros and cons that you guys see? Give me one pro, give me one con from each of you.
Well, if they pay the ransom, then whatever information that the bad guy has, hopefully the hacker honors his word and not put that information out in the dark web. So all of your personal information, your social, your driver license, whatever the case is, or medical information, that doesn't go out in the dark web. As far as what a con can be if they don't pay is the question.
Yep. No, if they do or if they do pay.
Yeah. No, if they do pay, then the information is not out there anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a pro or a con?
That's a pro for the consumer.
Yeah.
That's a pro. Yes.
Yeah. So then that could cut down on if they do pay, cuts down on potential lawsuits because the data's not released. I was going to say that for my pro, but I thought of another one. For a pro, you get your machines unlocked theoretically right away, so you could get back to business. Con, you're giving money to organized crime, so your money is going to fund other extremely nefarious purposes. It could be as simple as other ransomware, and who knows what else they're involved in. So your con is you're giving money to the bad guys.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of those. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about not paying the ransom, you're not fueling a lot of, and Randy knows a lot more about this than the average bear. But the way that the money spreads through the criminal system, so to speak, ransomware payments fund other criminal activity. So it's not like the guy gets paid and he goes and buys a yacht and he's buying mansions and he's just living the life. Right. He's helping fund other criminal activity. Terrorist organizations end up getting this money. It goes into a lot of different places. So it becomes a national security issue at the end of the day, whether businesses realize it or not. When they don't protect this information, not only is like, I guess the first degree issue is your employees, your customers' information is out there. But you're doing a poor job of cybersecurity, so you have to deal with this ransomware event. And if you decide to pay the money, then you're also funding things like terrorists, and that's a national security issue at the end of the day. So, any other last thoughts before we move into this UK article, guys? Are we good to
Just
go?
want to give a shout out to you, Brian. You were featured in this article,
Oh,
so shout out.
appreciate
Oh,
that.
yeah?
Mhm.
Look, Randy's like, I didn't even read it. But I talked about
I was stuck on the part where you said that I know more about how money spreads in criminal organizations than your average bear. And I'm like, man, what are you implying?
we know what goes on at your ranch.
Wow. No, it doesn't.
All right, so moving right along. So UK government, guys, has taken down this proactive step in cybersecurity by extending its protective domain name system, otherwise known as PDNS, to schools, leveraging intelligence from security services to enhance protection. So, Andre, you brought this article to our attention. Can you kind of explain what the PDNS system is and what the benefits are to organizations using something like this?
Yeah, so the PDNS, Protective Domain Name System, it's basically putting a shield over all of these schools. So the schools have to register, and to make it as simple as possible, think of your organization registering with the government to say, this is our IP addresses, this is our information. And now it puts a shield over this school that any information that's going out to any known malicious domains, it blocks the connection. So in theory, if there's, let's just say, some type of ransomware attack or some type of communication between your organization and the bad guys, the government usually knows at least some information as far as where these threats are coming from, and they're putting a blockage so that it can't even send information. So it's a great step, I think, and I'm surprised the U.S. hasn't thought of that either. But it's actually a great step in actually just putting that layer of protection over these public institutions.
I have a con to it, though, Brian.
Oh,
Let's hear
big
your
brother, big brother. Watch.
So no, not at all. So you're totally not wrong, but this would basically be like putting the Cisco umbrella product on your machine. Is it a good product? Probably, yeah. Does it help filter your DNS? Yeah, for sure. But is it the only arrow in a quiver of a fully protected cybersecurity by cybersecurity computer? No, it's one of many things that are important. So one con would be, I would be worried that schools will think, oh, we're safe now. We don't need cybersecurity because our DNS is good. And then the other thing is their workaround will just be, they're going to send their DNS like as a hash or something like that, where until that part of the cat and mouse game. What I mean by that, they'll just figure out another way to send it, and they'll get around it. And then so the good guys will figure out a way around that, and we'll kind of be back, we're kind of back where we were. So good stuff. Yes.
And DNS isn't the most secure thing going on out there. So I agree with you, Randy, that they'll find other ways, but they'll also find ways to exploit the DNS. That's an absolute possibility. This is interesting because I remember watching an interview one time of the CFO of Cloudflare, and they were basically saying and this was like 4 or 5 years ago, so it hasn't come to fruition. And it was probably a pipe dream and a hope and a wish by the CFO, hoping that the world would just go to Cloudflare and that would stop all cyber attacks. But that's basically what this person laid out. It was like, oh, everybody's going to, basically go through our stuff, and then that'll sanitize the internet, and then there won't be any more cyber attacks. And that hasn't happened yet. People haven't adopted it probably to the level that they had hoped. But this isn't anything new, right, guys? This is DNS filtering has been going on for a long time. And you can kind of look at China's Great Wall as a big DNS filter, no?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know if I like this too much, because I feel like it's taking away people's freedoms and rights. If you control, I mean, I'm not a big fan of this. I don't know. Have you guys thought about it from that angle?
I didn't think of it from that angle. And especially when you mentioned China now, how China controls the data. So now who knows,
Right. And I know Randy kind of mentioned Big Brother there.
No. I think that was Andre.
He mentioned it. Yeah.
But we're talking a school here, so we're not talking like, adults that.
Right. But what happens in school?
Freedom to do whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what happens in school? You research, right? So now you're controlling information. I don't know.
Potentially, yeah.
I don't know if I like that too much.
I know.
So I would much prefer we solve this problem a different way than filtering and controlling people's internet traffic. I know there's a need for it. And if you can put a framework up, something like this with a framework that we're only going to block the bad stuff, meaning malicious stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that we're not going to block, we're not going to control content based on what content it is, then I'd open my ears up. But once I hear,
once
I hear things like we're going to control the internet, use DNS to block things, you're opening up a can of worms that, in 5 years you might have something you never wish you had.
Right. I think where the gist of the article was just to block malicious sites, not control all content. But you're right.
Right.
They have control.
It's not starts.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Don't get me started, right?
Right. So there's a comment from the last topic. Do you guys want to go back to that, or
Sure.
You want to address? I think it's a good question. I'm going to throw it up on the screen, so we're going to lose Randy for a minute. Oh no, we're good. So Rudy over from LinkedIn said, if a company does pay, there's no guarantee that they will comply or not keep and still sell your data. So what do you guys think about this?
Well, there's 2 points there. It is true that they could then still sell it behind your back. Still sell, the bad guys could still sell the data behind your back. But then we've made the argument on the show that if they do sell the data behind your back, then their reputation takes a hit.
Yeah. Well, there's that. So the statistic is that only a third of the people get all their data back anyway. And I think a lot of the cause for that statistic is you have to remember most of these people we're dealing with aren't like masterminds of all of this stuff. This stuff is handled as ransomware as a service, and you just have a criminal who's doing criminal things, and they type in your code to decrypt everything, and you lose data sometimes. So the statistic is only a third of the people get all of their data back. So that said, yeah, there is that thing. Well, if they stop honoring that, then no one will pay the ransom. So there is that. So I think that's a legit point.
And you're still going to get sued at the end.
Yeah. And Rudy makes a good point. I mean, it is a good point, because data is now being possessed by criminals. I mean, are you really going to trust criminals, right? And ransomware has been around long enough, guys, where we have seen where cyber criminal groups have been taken down, and there's been evidence that data has fallen into other people's hands, right? I've said it before on the show where, cyber criminals are good at hacking, but they don't have good cyber defenses either. They're kind of easily hacked. right? So if they are sitting on a treasure trove of businesses' data that they stolen through ransomware attacks, and somebody hacks their network, well, now somebody else has that data, right? Which would take 3 clicks of a mouse to replicate data. So I mean that's the risk here, and Rudy brings up a good point. That's why I wanted to put it up on the screen, because you could pay and they might not release it, but it still might fall in the hands of other people and they might release it. So,
Yep.
Or
Yep.
they might be calling you up saying, "Hey, we got a bunch of data of yours. We want to be paid again."
Yeah.
We
Or
want
they might sell it,
right.
sell the access to it.
Yeah. So good point, Rudy. Thanks for the comment. All right, guys, moving right along. Last topic here before we go into our 2 follow-up topics. Going into this concerning development where cyber criminals have breached ESET or an ESET partner, and they've distributed data wipers to Israeli organizations. The incident underscores the growing sophistication of cyber attacks and the potential for supply chain vulnerabilities. This is really scary. ESET's a backup partner or a backup company. And when you hear backup companies and the word data wiping, when you're in our business, that kind of makes your skin crawl a little bit. So, Andre, what's going on here? What are the details of this partner and this data wiping?
Yeah. So on October 8th, they sent out a phishing email appearing to come out as ESET, and the subject was Advanced Threat Defense Team, and it basically said, "Hey, you need to click on this link because there's a new update that needs to be sent." The email passed all the authentication checks. It came from a legit domain, but that domain actually had been compromised. So let's just say the IT person or the user gets that email. Oh, okay, yep, I have ESET. Yep, I'm here in Israel. I need to do what I have to do to make sure everything stays safe. They double click on it, the setup.exe file, and it actually wipes the operating system, wipes the computer, and makes the computer brick.
Wow.
So,
what's the point of that?
Well, I would imagine this has to do with the war happening.
Yeah,
especially since it's covering Israel.
Well, there's no money to be made there if you're wiping somebody's machine.
Right.
You're just
throwing someone down.
Kind of vandal. It's like, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these could be, they could be supplying, something to the government or to the people, and
when you're in a war. I mean, you obviously know this, but when you're in a war, what matters most, like equipment and people, number 1 and 2, and then number 3 is probably going to be, or in the top 5 for sure, is going to be morale. So if you can go in and bork people's 365 accounts or wipe their computers or make services not work, like you then can turn the morale against the war efforts. It's probably something like that if I had to guess.
And you're creating chaos.
Yeah, or chaos. So I was kind of chuckling at this because I want to know how they got in. I know they sent an email, or I know what they did once they got in, but how'd they get in? Did they send an email?
They sent a phishing email.
So does the ESET partner in Israel, do they not have like process control on all their computers? Like, how did somebody phish them and just all of a sudden start doing something, inside their system? Or did they just get into like an old, like 365 account, and start sending out from there? Like, nobody in this article is really asking the question, like, how'd the good guy get hacked in the first place to start doing this? And I think that's a question that needs to be answered pretty soon, right?
Did Andre say they clicked on a phishing email?
Yeah, they clicked on the phishing email. Yeah.
So that's how the bad guys got into ESET, or how the bad guys were able to wipe the ESET partners' customers' computers.
No, the ESET partners' computers is my understanding of this.
Interesting. So I'm just wondering, like, why didn't they have like process control, so then the malware didn't just take over and do what it wants to do or whatever, right?
Yeah, but it's like us. I'm using Norton because everybody knows Norton, and now we're getting an email from Norton saying we need to do an update. And we're like, okay, let's do the update. We have Norton, and you click on it, and it just runs. Now, how come Norton did? Because ESET is an antivirus company, right?
Mhm.
They do backups too, but they think they do.
It should. I mean, it paints an interesting picture, right? Number one, as I think we said it earlier in the episode, where cyber criminals are getting really good with these emails, right? And we talked about it last week. They're getting really good with these emails. They know what companies you're doing business with. They know how to craft the emails to look like it came from them. I mean, I told you guys I got one that looked like one of the tickets from the ticketing system we used. I mean, it was to the T, looked perfectly like a ticket. And, you know, it was like, yeah, this isn't really from us. Like it wasn't anything we would do. So it was obvious, but it you know, they did their research. I can tell you that. And they're doing the research on everybody so they can get these things through. It's also like I get those spam emails from those list brokers that say like, hey, do you want to list ESET users? Well, they know how to get those, right? And they're legitimate because they're used for marketing purposes, but they can also be used for nefarious purpose, like targeting ESET users. Last thing I want to kind of say here on this article, you know, just generally speaking, this highlights supply chain attacks, right? And how prevalent they're becoming for businesses to consider the software that they're using, and potentially that software becoming a problem for them through no fault of their own. We saw this with CrowdStrike when it took down systems, right? Software can have problems. Software can be compromised. Every little application you have running on your computer potentially introduce more risk, right? So like, I know on my computer, my laptop here, I run very little programs for that reason, right? I run like 3 or 4 programs, and I have other machines that do other things, and you know, just because I don't want tons of programs running on the computer that has access to, you know, our financial systems, you know, operational systems, I don't want a lot of other crap running on those systems. And I don't think most businesses operate that way. I think most businesses buy a computer and they put everything on it, right? And each one of those programs, each one of those services can have a problem one day that could lead to something like we're seeing here, or ransomware event, or data exfiltration. All kinds of things can happen through these third-party supply chain attacks when it comes to software and SaaS applications. So that's what came to mind when I saw this. I was like, wow, here's another like SaaS vendor who's having a problem, and it's going to cause a lot of problems for their customers.
Well, and it can even happen with the actual vendors of the security software as well. I read an article getting ready for today's podcast where Trend Micro and Bitdefender both had a vulnerability. Apparently it was some shared library they used, I assume, but they had a vulnerability that users needed to update their software. So, you know, it can even happen in your software. And yeah, it's very important to, you know, to make sure that your vendors you're using are legit, and then also use zero trust for everything that you do. So, you know, I know that doesn't really apply here because this was a so-called security software and they told you to install it. But, you know, if you need a vendor to handle pictures with your contractors, like don't upload pictures of checks, you know, don't upload, you know, passwords, don't put sensitive information in there. Like only give your software vendors exactly what they need. So
one more thing, ESET is located in Slovakia, and although they're a friendly country to the US, you never know who else is living there, and if that could have been an inside job to then give out, you know, to give out to these bad guys. So one of the important things is why, at least here in the US, you should be using US software.
Wow. Andre, stick a flag in the ground.
Hey man, it's right here.
There you go. Sticking a flag in the ground. Don't use software outside of the US. All right.
Unless it's built over there, then it's brought into the US.
Unless it's SolarWinds, right? So new segment here, or actually we're kind of restructuring or better structuring the show, because I think we talk about doing follow-ups all the time, and Randy said, hey, why don't we actually just do a section called following up? And so that's what we're doing. This is called following up, where we take other topics that we talked about prior and we try to give, if there's any relevant updates to something we talked about, let's say in the last 4 to 6 weeks or less, we'll revisit it and bring everybody up to date. So first one on the docket for following up is the National Public Data Breach, which exposed the Social Security numbers and bankruptcy information for a ton of Americans. What are they? They claim bankruptcy. Is that the deal, guys? A recent exposed. So so it didn't expose bankruptcy information. I'm reading my notes wrong. They they filed for bankruptcy.
Yep.
So this is highlighting the ongoing challenges in protecting personal data. So this was what does National Public Data do? Do you guys know? I can't. What do you? Go ahead.
Well, they keep information on people. I think it's related to credit, if I'm not mistaken. But they keep information on people that vendors can then go pull this information. And so, they handle a lot of stuff. So they're pretty rich target, if you will.
Right. So there's been Andre, do you remember the numbers? It was initially reported, and I think that number was like super low. And then they kind of figured out it was a lot more.
Yeah, now it's 2.7 billion records, 277 gigabytes of data.
Yeah.
I think this is the one that basically said everyone's information is now out there.
Correct. Yeah.
And it may be even slightly higher than that now. So like pushing.
Yeah. At first there was like rumors that like stuff was being double counted and triple and quadruple counted, like the same Social Security number, but then they kind of found out that that wasn't the case. So what is the potential impact on affected individuals as a result of this, and what are the financial challenges that they're having? Is it class action lawsuits, or are they just having trouble getting operations back up and running?
Well, no, I'm sure they're probably having that too, but no, this is class action lawsuits. So everybody's coming. They have 20 different states that demanding that NPD pay civil penalties. And then the FTC is also breathing down their neck. So this is kind of just, and then you have the individuals as well going after them. So this is kind of to halt everything. And now they're going to just go through a process of bankruptcy. And they probably, I don't see how they survive this.
Yeah. And remember, they didn't really come out and like let people know and appear to at least be super proactive. Like this was kind of found out through some filings, I think in Maine, that kind of got the cat out of the bag kind of thing. I don't remember all the details because like you said, it's been like 6 weeks since we talked about it. But short story long, this is not as uncommon as you think, because how many companies can handle being down and not bringing in money? How many companies can handle, lawsuits, bad company morale, because they've just released everybody's information on the planet, or half the people or whatever. I know there's more than 2.9 billion people, but anyway, so it's not uncommon. I'm wrapping it up, Brian.
Thanks, buddy. Hey,
Randy has hit his word limit.
No. Shut down.
It started.
All right, last quick. We want to touch on this last one, which is this Internet Archive, guys. This Internet Archive has suffered its third cyber attack in the last month, and it's raising concerns about the security of digital archives and the preservation of online history. Who knew that this was like the museum of the internet? And there's a lot of people that are upset about this website, not only having a problem. I mean, it was like it's inevitable that every company is going to have a problem someday. Like, folks, like moving forward in life, if you think that like a company is not going to be attacked, something that you like, Facebook, Instagram, they're not going to have a cyber attacker go down. You're crazy. Like you're telling yourself a story that's just not true. These services and these things will go down, in my opinion, in the future. And this is a big deal because a lot of people are freaking out because they're like, oh, I've heard people say like somebody wanted something to disappear, so this happened, and they want to rewrite history because, basically this is history documented in a way. And, so I don't know what your guys are thoughts, but this organization is under heavy attack for some reason. And
well, I guess what's interesting, so the third attack is they got into the support platform. It's called Zendesk, but the support platform for the Internet Archive. And they got into that platform using what's called an API. And all an API is a really long username and a really long password. And then you can use it to interact with a service to get certain things back. But wow, imagine if you could get a hold of some company's support tickets for the past 20 years or whatever.
No thanks.
Yeah, I know people, not to actually work on it, but people send screenshots.
Right.
Bro,
that's what I mean. Like you don't want that getting out to.
Here's proof that I entered in, softball chick 2004 is my password. It won't let me log in or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no telling what's in there. So it could be a treasure trove for the bad guys.
So Andre, why do you think, we'll let you have the last word here since you got to run. Well, why do you think that this Internet Archives is such a target right now?
Well, I would just look more on their poor security practices than anything.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
That's what I would
I mean, you're not going to stop a DDoS attack, and that was the second one.
Yeah.
This last one was, wonder if it's different groups or the same group. Interesting. We're going to have to do a follow-up to the follow-up.
Yeah, we should. And we ought to just say every company out there that allows API access, just make them expire every 6 months. Doesn't fix everything, but it probably would have fixed this.
Maybe. Who knows?
Call Zendesk and let us know next week. All right.
Well, I mean, APIs are fairly new, right? So we're just learning how to protect those better, right? And AI is going to go through the same tribulations, right?
Maybe so.
100%. We're going to do stuff and people are going to be like, oh, yeah, we probably shouldn't do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty much how it's gone to this point, right, Randy?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, guys, thanks for the input. Randy, I'll see you soon. Andre, see you next week.
I'll be watching from Zoom. All right.
Yep. See you guys. Share the show, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care.
All right.